Hello, and thank you all for choosing this presentation. My name is Mila Martelli, and I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about, I suspect you have already heard about it, preventive conservation. Our contribution is entitled Monitoring and Conservation Plans for Monumental Stone Buildings, the case study of the Baptistery of San Giovanni in Corte and Pistoia, and the authors are Mila Martelli, Ybañez, Worboys, Valerio, Tesi. It should be emphasized that this is an ongoing research that joins the many other experiments around the world with monitoring of conservative treatments for stones. You won't see numerical results. You will see the choice and the designing of a monitoring plan that will give its numerical results in the coming years. As you are all aware, when we talk about preventive conservation, we usually refer to the ICOM statement: indirect measures in action that do not interfere with the materials and structure of the items and do not modify their appearance. But I'd like to cite Conrad van Balen. When dealing with monuments and sites, conservation does usually not allow to change or optimize the environmental condition, as climatic condition or exposure to earthquakes, and we therefore need to interfere with the materials and structure of the items. I started with this general consideration because the discussion develops within this limit, that is, the need to interfere with the matter that constitutes the monuments. And to close this introduction, I would also like to point out that the research develops on two different layers, one relating the theme of the final scientific report, monitoring plan and conservation plan, and the other relating the specific theme of the durability of water-repellent treatments for stones. Let's have a look at the table of content of this brief presentation. First, we'll explain the scope of the research. Then we'll focus on the reasons for the research, illustrating questions and goals. Then we'll tell you where we started from, why we chose that particular case study. We'll illustrate you the method, focusing on the design of the monitoring plan. And finally, we'll discuss the results of the study. As we know, preventive conservation of cultural heritage is based on the principle of constant maintenance, preventing the triggering of degradation phenomena by carrying out minimal conservative interventions. This process presupposes that maintenance cycles of minimal intervention should be identified, carried out with the economic resources at disposal, and, most importantly, in suitable times. That is, before the degradation phenomena are renewed. But to do so, we should be able to find specific data to program the cyclicity of the interventions. As everyone could agree, this seems a simple precept, but it is quite difficult to implement when preventive conservation concerns outdoor monuments and decorated surfaces of the architecture, because a plurality of factors, such as, for example, context, environmental factors, pollution, anthropic degradation, usability, and so on, introduce a large number of operational difficulties. So, what if this research aims to investigate which tools and data can be used to schedule the cyclicity of conservative interventions, and focuses on a particular issue, that is, the possibility of programming the maintenance cycles for water-repellent treatments of stone. I'd like to give you some background information. Where do we start from? The starting point was my doctoral research, conducted from 2016 to 2018 over two historical buildings in Pistoia. The research I've just mentioned was focused on determining the residual efficacy of different types of water-repellent treatments for stone, polysiloxanes and fluorinated elastomers applied on marble, serpentines, and Tuscan grey sandstone, performing contact sponge water absorption test as a comparison test between treatments with different and known aging. You could find more details about it in the presentation Assessment of Residual Effectiveness for Water-Repellent Treatments for Stone Buildings, Martelli, Salvatici, Garzonio de Vita, and at the end of this presentation. Let me elaborate further on the choice of the case study. Why did we choose the Baptistery of San Giovanni in Corte in Pistoia? Well, we had a lot of information of the various restorations of the last decades, because of the presence of three different types of stones to investigate: white marble, serpentine, and Tuscan grey sandstone. The different states of conservation of the various fronts documented over the years, the result of the contact sponge water absorption test carried out in 2018, the last restoration carried out between 2018 and 2019, and finally, and more important, the agreement of the Superintendency and the Cathedral Church of Pistoia to carry out the tests on the monument. Let me go back to what I said earlier about carrying out a conservative intervention in suitable times. As we have pointed out in the article, although the Baptistery of San Giovanni in Corte is a best practice case, it has undergone various interventions from 1999 to 2000 to today. These were still curative rather than preventive conservation interventions, always performed downstream of phenomena of degradation already retrieved. Let the picture speak for themselves. Somehow, we forget that the treatment could lose its performance over time. But there is another very important aspect for the setting of the conservation plan. From the intervention of the overall restoration, 1999 to 2000, a major degradation was on the north sides, with presence of moss, vegetation and algae. Showing how, on those sides, north exposure, the local climatic conditions are profoundly different from those of the south fronts, which, even with an older treatment, have patinus and lichens, but not excessive proliferation of vegetation and algae. What were we looking for in 2018? To go back to the tests carried out in 2018, the tests provided a first series of data useful for assessing the durability of water repellent treatments used on the monuments. Let me use a graphic to explain this. The graph refers to contact sponge water absorption tests performed on different slabs. The slabs had treatments carried out in different years. We had a treatment seniority of 18 years, called time C, TC, 4-year seniority, called time B, 1-year seniority, called time A, and another 1-year seniority with an eye anti-writing treatment. As you have seen, the test reveals significant decays in the effectiveness of water repellent treatments, even in rather short times, a few years. That would imply, wanting to pursue the path of stone protection with water repellents, close maintenance cycles, mild cleaning, and repetition of treatments, biocide or protective products, within 5 or 6 years to maintain high levels of protection. So, what else was missing? Why didn't we feel confident? We still cannot confidently schedule the cyclicity of intervention. We cannot confidently estimate the durability of the treatments. So we looked for some answers, starting from the absorption data, time A, time B, time C, in analogy to the studies of Ferreira and Delgado, were obtained the percentages of effectiveness. The figure shows a hypothetical decay concerning the first data collected for white marbles in 2018, but the entire dataset is not yet enough to determine the decay curves of the effectiveness of the water repellent treatments, even implemented with a time zero of maximum efficacy referred to an entirely new treatment. These results are still not enough to confidently estimate the durability of the treatments. More data would provide a more reliable line of decay of the protective efficacy of treatment. Thus, after the restoration carried out at the end of 2018, consistent in the complete cleaning of the stone apparatus with the removal of patinus and consolidation of detached parts, and without subsequent drifting of water repellents, was organized a monitor plan. The monitor plan simply consisted and choosing a monitoring slab for each lithological type. Each slab would be treated only on a half, thus to have a time zero, maximum effectiveness of treatment, and a final time, TF, equal to zero effectiveness of the treatment. In the coming years, the effectiveness of the treatments could be easily monitored by comparison of the two parts treated and untreated, and with the slabs with treatments performed in previous years, 2014-2017. The treated slabs will give back the values time 0 in the year of the treatment, time 1 in the next year, time 2 in the second year, and so on, always to be compared to the final time TF and eventually to the treatments performed in the previous years, thus progressively giving back over the year a more and more precise, accurate trace of decaying. In detail, the monitor plan has been organized as follows. Identification of the sample slabs, application of treatments on alpha slab, as you can see in the images and in addition in the table for the treatments on Tuscan grey sandstones. Then, annually, starting from 2020, in climatic conditions similar to those of 2018, summertime, temperature of 30-35 Celsius degree, relative humidity from 40 to 60%, sunny and stable condition, absorption test of the new sample slabs, treated and untreated parts, and repetitions of the tests on the slabs already investigated in 2018. And here we are, at the main point of the study. The transposition of the results on a time scale will provide a more reliable estimate of the decay of the effectiveness over time. In the following figure are displayed different decay prediction curves that, at this moment, can only be hypothesized. Performing the contact sponge water absorption test as a comparison test between treatments with different unknown agent, the next measurement would provide 5 different water repellent efficacy landmarks: time 0, time A, time B, time C, and final time, outlining a first protection durability curve. These relate to what I was saying earlier, and progressively the monitoring will give, over the years, a more and more precise, accurate rate of decaying. So, now, let's summarize briefly what we have looked at. We talked about the results already obtained with the tests of 2018, the choice of the monitoring plan, the designing of the test points, the performed treatments, the planning of the monitoring. Datasets will converge into the drafting and management of the monument conservation plan. In conclusion, let me sum up our main points. We are confident that this ongoing research will provide useful promptings for implementing a final scientific report and conservation plan for the specific monument. Furthermore, this case proves to be an excellent test bench for some of the traditional water repellent treatments for stones. As we have seen, it helps to determine a more reliable durability forecast, both for the specific monument and, with enough approximation, also for other monuments in which analogous treatments have been carried out on similar lithotypes. Finally, for the information collected so far and the upcoming ones, the study will ultimately provide important elements for the implementation of preventive conservation, for carrying out future investigation, and for comparisons with similar cases. Regarding the transfer of knowledge and methods, publication of these and similar analyses and results on freely accessible platforms are certainly to be encouraged to make it possible to compare cases and systematize data. And this brings me at the end of this presentation. Tests have actually been performed in the past August 2020. They have shown a new rapid decrease of the 2017 treatment in comparison to the 2019 treatments. Unfortunately, we cannot report on them here, but we are confident to be able to give you the new monitoring results soon, and we certainly will in the next editions. In the meanwhile, you can find the first results of 2018 tests in my doctoral thesis at your disposal at lore.unifi.it. Now, thank for your attention, and please do not hesitate to contact us if you need any further information or would like to make any comments.